Hello, and welcome to Specimen the Sociologist. This is your host, Jessamyn Reichmann. If you're new here, welcome. I have a spunky way of introducing myself, and that is my name, Jessamyn, rhymes with specimen, but with a J. I'm a budding sociologist who is radically in love with people. And this love has led me on a quest to not only understand the science behind our social lives, but also to explore how that knowledge can help stabilize our social interactions. Today's episode is another principle in a pod. While peas might serve as the substance of pods, I thought principles could serve as the substance of this podcast. Get it? Podcast? Anywho, while science is important, it's crucial we remain sensible in how we both consume and steward information. Without further ado, let's dive into today's principle, purity. The reason I chose purity for today's principle is because it's been a central theme in my journey over the past 4 years. In my Superman's S stands for sociology episode, I shared the turbulent path that led me to this platform. Whether it was graduating twice into a global pandemic, unexpected job loss, fellowship rejections, and even the loss of loved ones. With every rejected plan and perceived delay, I realized that each setback was actually purifying the intent in my original pursuit and freed me from traveling down the quote unquote safe path. And that's why I chose purity as today's principle. So tighten your capes and let's get ready to fly. When you first hear the word purity, how do you contextualize it? In some cultures, purity is associated with social standards and expectations, such as being clean, morally upright, or even connected to concepts like virginity or religious adherence. From a sociological perspective, purity is merely a social construct that can significantly vary across different societies and in different social contexts. For the purpose of this podcast, we're going to cha-cha slide on over to our friend Merriam-Webster for helping define this principle. According to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, purity is the quote-unquote state of being pure, which suggests that a person or thing is free of any contamination and unnecessary elements. While this may sound like a simple definition, it's far more profound than it seems. In the context of social relationships, how rare is it to find someone who is pure in personality? A person whose thoughts aren't shaped by social media or the culture of their family, someone bold enough to even chart a new path in an old industry, or even a person who is single-minded in their decisions and untouched by the status quo. Leveraging this definition and the rhetorical questions that I asked, I would argue that purity, in a social context, represents a lifestyle of freedom. As we unpack this, I'll provide different perspectives to bring this idea to life. A few weeks ago, I gave a keynote speech at my former high school. The challenging task was writing about the concept of unity. So I reflected on my experience as a student and how things have and have not changed over the years. In the beginning of the speech, I mentioned that the moment you walk into the hallways of Roosevelt High School, you will automatically be greeted by its culture. This includes its values, traditions, and the ways that people process, which ultimately shapes the standard for how we show up. As rich and as vibrant as culture can be, it also can be intoxicating. For additional context, my high school has a reputation for being cliquey and lacking the social cohesion that students desperately crave. By the end of my speech, I emphasized my main point: unity will cost you the current version of yourself. Unbeknownst to these students, they had embraced many of the same social behaviors and traditions that my peers and I had subconsciously adopted from the upperclassmen. Coming off of that speech and going into my next week of production, the speech really inspired my recent podcast episode called social inebriation, where I discuss the theory of herd mentality, social behavior where people follow the crowd, mimicking others instead of making their own decisions. In that episode, I pointed out that no one wakes up thinking, hey, today I'm going to lose my sense of self and adopt the mindset of those around me. Rather, it's a gradual slide, often starting with the desire to belong, fear of missing out, or unhealthy exposure. So, if we as individuals lack self awareness, we can find ourselves adopting a culture without consciously realizing it. And that is why I believe purity is a lifestyle of freedom, one where you take control over your decisions and expressions. But with all of that introduction out of the way, let's get to the fun part: how to adopt purity as a personal principle and live a life of peculiarity. The first suggestion that I would give would be to take rejection as a compliment. Oftentimes growing up, I heard that rejection is redirection, but I believe that to be impartial because rejection has this refining nature where it asks you, why are you earnestly pursuing this person? Why are you earnestly pursuing this job or this career? It challenges you on your intent. And I realized for me that that was an invite to be more sincere with who I was and what I actually wanted to do. Now, I can say that rejection looks different in different contexts. And personally, I found that besides professional, social, or academic rejection, that the hardest one for me to overcome was verbal rejection from people that I truly loved. So let me leverage a quick story. When I first got the idea for this podcast, I remember sharing it with a family member who I value deeply. I told them that I felt called to build this platform, and their immediate response was that no one really knows what they're doing at the age of 24, and that I should pursue a corporate career as a means of safety. And at first, I took offense, but then I remembered at 24, they had faced a similar crossroad, whether to stay in their field or to pursue entrepreneurship. And that feeling of offense quickly turned into a moment of grace that I realized in the moment they projected their experience as the standard for my next steps. Now, it doesn't mean that I throw all caution to the wind and I don't take away the truth of their statement, but I, again, had to use that rejection as a tool of refinement to truly ask myself, is this something that I really want? And so that's what I would say, that rejection again, take it as a compliment to who you are truly becoming and what you're actively pursuing. The second suggestion that I would give is that I believe every person is creative. No one on this planet has the same exact experience as you. Sure, there may be similarities, but there is only one you. And I think about the different conversations I've had, the different experiences and exposure, and the words of encouragement, or even like political climate that I was born into versus what I'm currently experiencing now. Like, again, my life experience, no one else can replicate. And so going back to the conversation about the podcast and how the person suggested that I should go corporate. In that moment, I also remembered all the hurdles I had overcome to even get to that point, and how each challenge had uniquely shaped my character and spirit of tenacity. So again, to them, it may have seemed like a crazy idea, but to me, it was just another adventure that I was getting ready to embark upon. And this actually reminds me of another conversation I had where my colleague was a grant manager. And it was like a random Tuesday, and I wobbled on over from my cubicle to hers, and I said, hey, did you ever originally see yourself as a grant manager? And do you get fulfillment from your role? Now, looking back at it, I realized that was a loaded question to ask someone who was established in the career. But she graciously told me that her current job actually was not her ideal career path, but she had fallen in love, started a family, and needed a form of financial income. Despite this, she found fulfillment in her role. She explained that behind every grant donation, she was helping contribute to the new telling of another person's story. And that was her way of problem solving. which is really beautiful because the grants that we oversaw had to do with education as well as with youth and adult homelessness and a couple other things. However, what that conversation showed me was that whether you are a performing artist, a stay at home parent, or a grant manager, your unique experiences contribute to your divine perspective. And that's something that only you can offer this world. Now, while I do state that every person is a creative, it's up to the individual to figure out their medium for expression. And some people spend their life doing just that, and some people don't. So hopefully you're in the first category. My third and final suggestion would be adopt risk taking into your daily routine. Now, I know, taking risks can feel intimidating, but it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as you remaining consistent with your dream, pitching an audacious project to your boss, or asking your crush out on a date. Because the more you begin to reimagine the world, you'll find yourself not only taking more risks, but receiving greater rewards. This reminds me of a poster that a friend gave me back in high school, and it was a picture of President JFK smoking a cigar. Now, on the poster, there was a quote from him that said, "Those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly." And that is why I believe purity is synonymous with freedom. The moment you walk away from the way that life was presented to you, you will begin to chart an entirely new path, one that the world may actually be in need of. That's a wrap on today's principle. I hope this episode gave you a fresh perspective on how purity is a lifestyle of rejecting the norm and embracing peculiarity. Make sure to subscribe, share this episode with a friend, and if you found this content valuable, check out the ways you can support this vision in this episode's bio. As always, have a powerful day.